Welcome from Lake Murray State Park, group camp number 1 for the Sabbath, weekly Sabbath. And for those that will get this later, then Sunday evening we begins the Feast of Tabernacles. But otherwise, this is a fantastic place. It's kind of cool this morning. That's one of the reasons I got this little heavy-duty shirt on, because another aspect of it, now you can see my undershirt, in case you see it, because I've lost weight. And by losing weight, everything is kind of sagging. I didn't realize that until I got up here and put it on. And that just changed from last year. I've dropped, just from last year, I've dropped nearly 20 pounds.
Hallelujah.
And most of it's in my arms and in my legs. I can't seem to get rid of this pot belly. But that's neither here nor there. We're continuing with our study in Ezekiel. We're in chapter 19. And the way it's listed in my King James, it says, a lament for the princes of Israel. Moreover, verse 1 of chapter 19, moreover, take up a lamentation for the princes of Israel. Now, I'm still using a Gill commentary, so I'll tell you when I'm going to commentary. And this commentary is, moreover, take up you a lamentation. These words are directed to the prophet Ezekiel to compose a doleful ditty, a mournful song, such as was used at funerals. And by it represent the lamentable state of the nation of the Judeans and their governors, in order to affect them with what was past, present, and yet to come. Because he's looking at it and talking about, as we go through this chapter, he's talking about what they did, why Yahweh is punishing them, why they were sent into captivity. And it's also a warning to future generations, including ourselves, of what if we don't follow the laws of Yahweh and the statutes and do them according to the way Yahweh intended them, not the way we think they should be done, or like they did. For the princes of Israel, or this is commentary, or currently concerning them, the princes meant were Yahoahaz, Yahoakim, and Jeconiah and Zedekiah, who were kings, though they're called here princes, these words being synonymous, or if so called by way of diminution. The reason might be because they were tributary, or meaning they were paying tribute either to the king of Egypt or the king of Babylon. It varied from year to year. Ezekiel 19:2, and say, what was your mother? Now this seems strange to us because we don't think things along this way. It says, and say, what was your mother? A lioness? She couched among the lions, in the middle of the young lions, she nourished her cubs. Commentary. And say, what is your name, your mother? That is to say, so to the then reigning prince Zedekiah, what is thy mother like? To what is she to be compared? By whom is meant not the royal family of David only, or Jerusalem, the metropolitans of this nation, but the whole body of the people. And so the Targum, now this is a Jewish commentary, interprets it of the congregation of Israel. The answer to the question is a lioness. She is like one not for her strength and glory, but for her cruelty and rapine, for her want of humanity, mercy, and justice. Meaning she does not, consider anyone else. She lay down among the lions, that is the kings, as the Targum interprets, in heathen princes, the kings of the nations about them, as Egypt and Babylon, so called for their despotic and arbitrary power, tyranny, and cruelty. Now this lioness, the people of Judea, lay down among them, joined with them in leagues and marriages, and learned from their manners and became of the same temper and disposition. Meaning, she went into all of these alliances with the nations around her. Okay? And it makes a referral to Jeremiah 50, verse 17. Jeremiah 50, verse 17, Israel is a hunted sheep. The lions have driven him away. First, the king of Assyria devoured him, and now at last Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, has broken his bones. Therefore Yahweh armies, or hosts, the Elohim of Israel, says, Behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. I will bring Israel again to his pasture, and he will feed on Mount Carmel and Bashan. His soul will be satisfied on the hills of Ephraim and in Gilead. In these days and in that time, says Yahweh, the iniquity of Israel will be sought for, and there will be none. Also the sons of Judah, and they won't be found. For I will pardon them whom I leave as a remnant. He's talking about a remnant, not those that are left over. I have been in that area where it says Carmel and Bashan. I would love to live there. It is really a nice area in a northern part of Jordan. Well, I should say northwestern part of Jordan, just across on the other side of the Jordan River, up in the northern part of Israel. And it's beautiful, rolling hills, clean. There was fruit trees, animals, the whole bit. Okay. It says here, commentary. She nourished her whelps among young lions, princes. As the Targum explains it, either the princes of Judah, who were become like young lions, fierce and cruel, or the princes of other nations among whom the children of the royal family were brought up, or, however, they were trained up in the principles of such, even of arbitrary and despotic power, and were taught to oppress their subjects and not to execute justice and mercy among them. Meaning they were despots. They were what we, now I can't think of the word. Today in the modern language would be these countries where they're like Hitler and things like that.
Dictators?
Huh?
Dictators?
Dictators. Thank you. Sometimes I have a problem with words. Going on with Ezekiel 19:3, she brought up one of her cubs. He became a young lion. He learned to catch the prey. He devoured men. Commentary, and she brought up one of her whelps, or sons, as a Targum, and made him to ascend, as the word signifies, to mount the throne. This was Jehoahaz, whom the people of the land took and anointed him, and made him king instead of Josiah, his father. That is from 2 Kings 23:30. His servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. The people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's place. Commentary. She brought up one of her sons, as a Targum, and made him to ascend, as the word signifies, to mount the throne. This was Jehoahaz, whom the people of the land took and anointed him and made him king instead of Josiah his father. He became a young lion, that is, a king, as the same Targum explains, and a tyrannical and arbitrary one. And it learned to catch the prey. Being instructed by evil counselors, he soon learned to oppress his subject, to get their substance from them, and to do many things as he said to do. As he says in 2 Kings 23:32, he did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, according to all that his fathers had done. So, I mean, they didn't get an improvement by getting a new king. They got the same old despots, just like we have in the world today. Commentary, it devoured men, or a man, Adam, the people of Israel, so-called, as the Judeans frequently observe. It ate up and destroyed their liberties. Anybody think about that now? Their liberties, their privileges, and their property. And that's found in Ezekiel 34:11. You, my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, are men, and I am your Elohim, says the master, or Adonai Yahweh. It became a young lion, that is, a king, as the same as the Targum explains, and a tyrannical and arbitrary one. And he learned to catch the prey, which, instructed by evil counselors, he soon learned to oppress his subjects, to get the substance from them, to do evil things, as he said to do back in 2 Kings 23:32. You know, you look at the world today, and you look at what all is going on, all the changes that have gone in the last 3 years, all of the rights that we've lost and are continuing to lose, and at the same time, as it said here, in taking the prey, eating up and destroying their property, their values, your money is worth less each and every day as we go through, just for the fact of inflation and the other things that are going on. Verse 4 of Ezekiel 19, the nations also heard of him. He was taken in their pit, and they brought him with hooks to the land of Egypt. Meaning put hooks through his nose to drag him where he didn't want to go. Commentary, the nations also heard of him. The neighboring nations, particularly the Egyptians, the fame of his behavior reached them. They were informed how he used his own subjects and what designs he had formed and what preparations he was making against his neighbors, wherefore they thought it proper to oppose his measures in time and to hinder him from proceeding and putting his projects into execution by coming out against him and fighting him as they did. He was taken in their pit, alluding to the manner of hunting and taking lions and such like beasts of prey, which was done by digging pits, and covering the mouths of them with straw, as Jarsi, a commentator, observes, into which in their flight, as they were running, they fell in unawares. So Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, came out against Jehoahaz and took him and put him in bonds in Riblah, the land of Hamath, that he might reign no more in Jerusalem after he had been on the throne. But, I mean, he was so bad that they came against him after 3 months because he had designs against them. And they brought him with chains to the land of Egypt, commentary, or with hooks in his nose, as in Isaiah 37:9, or with a bridle, as the Septuagint, or with branches, as the Syriac version, in his jaws. The Targum renders it in the chains as we do. It is certain that Jehoahaz was put in bonds or fetters and carried to Egypt, where he died. That's found in 2 Kings 23:33-34. Ezekiel 19:5. Now when she saw that she had waited and her hope was lost, then she took another of her cubs and made him a young lion. Commentary. Now when she saw that is his mother, as the Syriac version expresses, not his natural mother, but as the mother of Sisera, looked out and waited for him, but with the congregation of Israel, as Jarsi interprets it, the body of the Jewish people, that she had waited for the return of Jehoahaz out of Egypt, which was expected for some time, or that she was become sick or weak and feeble and brought to a low estate by his captivity and by the tax the king of Egypt put upon her. And her hope was lost as for his return to her anymore. And so of being eased the tribute imposed, and of being restored by him to liberty and glory, for Yahweh had declared that he should return no more to his native country, but died in the place where he was carried. Jeremiah 22:10. Then she took another of her sons, as the Targum says, and made him a young lion, a king, as the same Targum paraphrased it, that is, Jehoiakim, the brother of Jehoahaz, before was called Eliakim. But his name was changed by Pharaoh Necho, and though he is said to make him king, yet it was by the consent of the people of the Judeans. Verse 6 of 19, he went up and down among the lions. He became a young lion. He learned to catch prey. He devoured men. Commentary. And he went up and down among the lions, the kings, as the Targum, kings of neighboring nations, as Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And sometimes he was subject to one, sometimes to the other. And his going up and down among them may denote his continuance as a king, for whereas his brother reigned but 3 months, he reigned for 11 years. He became a young lion, an oppressive prince, a cruel and tyrannical king, and learned to catch the prey and devour men. He was notorious for his acts of injustice and arbitrary power, for the detaining of wages of workmen, and for his oppression, violence, and rapine, and shedding of innocent blood. Verse 7 of Ezekiel 19, he knew their palaces and laid waste their cities. The land was desolate with its fullness because of the noise of his roaring. Got 2 pages here stuck together. Okay. Commentary. He knew their desolate palaces. He took notice of the palaces or seats of the richest men of the nation and pillaged them of their treasure and wealth. So they became desolate. It may be rendered. He knew their widows or his own widows, whom he made so. He slew the men to get their substance into his hands and then defiled their widows. He laid waste their cities by putting the inhabitants to death or obliging them to leave them and retire elsewhere, not being able to pay the taxes he imposed upon them, partly to support his own grandeur and luxury, and partly to pay the tribute to the king of Egypt. The land was desolate in the fullness thereof by the noise of his roaring, by his menaces and threatenings, edicts and exactions. He also terrified the inhabitants of the land, that thought it was full of men and riches. It became a great measure destitute of both. The people left their houses, both in city and country, and fled elsewhere with the remainder of their substance that had not been fallen into his hands. His menacing demand, being signified by roaring, agrees with his character as a lion to which he is compared. In Proverbs 19:12 we read, the king's wrath is like the roaring of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. It's there every morning and it's gone by noon. You know, it's the thing. You look around here today. I was listening to some of the news outlets talking about the number of houses that the people can't make their house payment. There's even a lot of the small mom and pop businesses that can't make their rent payments on their own business because they're not making enough money. And so you're having all this changing, and the price of houses has dropped. Better, I think, on average, at least 20% or more, depending on what market you're in. Then you've got the situations in the various large cities, you know, like Chicago, the murder rate in Chicago. Same thing with New York City. Same thing, or other things with like San Francisco. You know, the people that are living on the street, and the number of people living on the street is increasing day by day because of the situation that's going on right now in this country. And then the nations, verse 8, then the nations attacked him on every side from the province. They spread their net over him, and he was taken in their pit. Commentary. Then the nations set against him, or gave against him, that is, their voice as kimchi. They called to one another to gather together against him. They gave their counsel against him. They joined together, agreed, and combined against him, and disposed their armies and set them in array against him. On every side from the provinces, Nebuchadnezzar and his auxiliaries, which consisted of the people of the provinces all around, who were brought together and placed round about Jerusalem at the siege of it, particularly the bands of the Chaldeans, Syrians, Moabites, and Ammonites, as found in 2 Kings 24:1. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. You know, the way things just went back and forth, in commentary, and spread their net over him, which may be expressively both of policy, crafty and secret contrivances, and designs of Jehoiakim's enemies and of their external force and hostile power against him. He was taken in their pit, which they dug for him, or by the means which they contrived for his ruin, in which they put in execution and effected. The metaphor of a lion is carried on, and the manner of taking one is alluded to, which is commonly in pits, as the Roman writer Pliny says, and the Arab now dig a pit where lions are observed to enter, and covered over slightly with reeds or small branches of trees, they frequently decoy and catch them. Ezekiel 19:9. They put him in a cage with hooks and brought him to the king of Babylon. They brought him into the stronghold so that his voice should no more be heard in the mountains of Israel. Commentary. They put him in chains or in an enclosure or in a collar with hooks. Put a collar of iron, as it said, about his neck, which had hooks in them. And to those hooks chains were put, in which he was led a prisoner, and it is certain that he was bound in fetters in order to be carried to Babylon, though it is thought he never reached Babylon, but died on the way. That's in 2 Chronicles 36:6. They brought him to Babylon to Nebuchadnezzar, who came up against him with his army of nations. He, having rebelled against him and being taken by his soldiers, was brought to him in chains wherever he was, whether without the gates of Jerusalem or any other place, for it is not certain where he was. However, they brought him into holes, places of confinement, one after another, in his way to Babylon, where it seems before he came there, he died, and was cast out on a dunghill, and had no burial, as Jeremiah foretold in Ezekiel 22:18. That his voice should no more be heard in the mountains of Israel, in the kingdom of Israel, to the terror of his inhabitants, threatening them with death if they did not answer his exorbitant demands, nor was it ever heard any more. The allusion still is to a lion traversing the mountains and roaring after his prey, to the terror of other creatures. Verse 10 of chapter 19 of Ezekiel. Your mother was like a vine in your blood, planted by the waters. It was fruitful and full of branches by reason of many waters. Commentary. The mother was like a vine in your blood. Another simile he is here made use of relating to the same persons. The same that they were compared to a lioness are here compared to a vine, as the people of the Judeans frequently are. In Psalms 80, verse 8, the same person is here addressed. The then reigning prince Zedekiah, whose mother the Judean people from whence he sprung had been in the times past, and still was like a vine, especially with respect to his blood, the royal family from the shore he descended. The allusion is to the use of blood laid to the roots of vines, by which they became more fruitful. It may have regard, as Calvin thinks, to the original of the Jewish nation, who when in their blood, or as soon as they were born, that is, as soon as they became a nation, they were at first like a flourishing vine. So some renders the words, in thy likeness. So different ones, including the Targum agrees. The congregation of Israel, when it did according to the law, was like a vine and grew, planted by the waters. For in those hot countries, vines required water and thrived better for bringing it near to them, or for being in watery places. This may denote the many privileges, blessings, laws, and ordinances which were for the advantage of the Jewish people, both in their civil and ecclesiastical state. She was fruitful and full of vines by reason of many waters, grew populous, rich, and wealthy. I mean, it's all the things that were being done, but they were not being done according to the law of Yahweh. Verse 11, Ezekiel. It had strong branches for the scepters of those who ruled. Their stature was exalted among the thick boughs. They were seen in their height with the multitude of their branches. Commentary. She had strong rods for the scepters of them that bare rule. That is, many sprung from her. She had many children, and rose up in that nation who were fit to hold scepters, to be kings, rulers, and governors, and were such, so the Targum says, and there were in her strong rulers, kings that were highly to subdue kingdoms, such as David, Solomon, and in hers after them. Now this is talking about Israel producing these kings. Or this may refer to the times of Josiah, and at his death, who left behind him several sons, who became kings, besides other princes of the blood, as his brother Mattaniah, who also was king, and some even carry this to Zedekiah himself, who had many children, who seemed to be strong rods, fit for scepters, or scepter bearers, that is, to be kings. The illusion seems to be that the scepters of the ancients, which were no other than walking sticks, cut off of the stems and branches of trees, and decorated with gold and studded with golden nails. Thus Achilles, induced by Homer, was swearing by a scepter, which, being cut off of a trunk of a tree left on the mountain, and stripped of its bark and leaves, should never more produce leaves and branches, or sprout again. Such an one, he observes, the Grecian judges carry in their hands. Sometimes they were made of the oleaster, or wild olive, the same as a shepherd's staff, for what shepherds were to their flocks, they that were kings to men. And her stature was exalted among the thick branches, as the body and trunk of a tree rises up higher than the branches, which are thickest about the middle of it, and so more eminent and conspicuous. Thus it was with the nation of the Judeans, and the royal family in it, and appeared more glorious and excellent among the nobles and princes of it, as Targum expresses it by saying, it was lifted up in its strength above its own kingdom. Or rather, the sense is that the days of David and Solomon and others, it greatly exceeded all the kingdoms of the nations around about. And she appeared in her height with the multitude of branches, and was seen and taken notice of for the multitude of her people and the grandeur of her state. Well, even today, there's a lot going on in England with King Charles III. He is making a lot of changes to the royal family. If you know who I'm talking about, with Princess Beatrice and I can't remember the other one's name. Prince Andrew's two daughters, they're now going to lose their title as princesses. Any of the royal family that were called princesses and princesses, they're now going to lose their titles. They're no longer be called prince and princess, and will no longer as such. By losing their title, they will not be in the line of ascension to the throne. So he's reducing the size of the royal family. When you get a chance, check into it. It's very interesting. Look at what all they are doing, and the uproar is causing among the members of the royal family, because as such, their income comes from that title. Did you know that Prince William, when he replaced Prince Charles as the Prince of Wales, he now has a another word. His value, his wealth, now exceeds $1 billion. From all of the properties that belong to Prince Charles now goes down to Prince William. And but you also realize that all of the properties that Queen Elizabeth owned went to Charles. So he's even richer than he was before.
A lot of money be made being royal.
Yeah.
Dennis?
Yes.
He's also changed the title of the King of England as no longer as being the defender of the faith, but the defender of faith. And it's to accommodate some, supposedly it's been to accommodate some of the mullahs and some of the imams he's met with since he came to the throne.
Well,
it's no longer a reference to the Christian faith, if you will.
Right.
The Church of England.
Well, it's talking about the new Chrislam. I think it's what it's called, Chrislam.
Yes.
It's the new Jewish, Catholic, Muslim faith, Christian. So, I mean, they're actually building, in this one location, they're building I guess you could say, a church building or a temple for each one of those three faiths. Ezekiel 19:12. But it was plucked up in fury. It was cast down to the ground, and the east wind dried up its fruit. Its strong branches were broken and withered. The fire consumed them. Commentary. But she was plucked up in fury. That this vine being turned into a degenerate plant of a strange vine, or the people of the Judeans becoming wicked, disobedient to Elohim, and disregarding his laws and ordinances, the wrath of Elohim came upon them, and let in the Assyrians among them, who carried off the 10 tribes at once. And the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, not taking warning hereby, but continuing and increasing in sinful courses, great part of them were carried captive into Babylon, with their king Jeconiah, who succeeded Jehoiakim before mentioned, when the kingdom seemed to be utterly ruined and destroyed, and is what is here referred to. Because I mean, that's all that Ezekiel is really referring to, is what is going on and what has brought them to their situation. Commentary: she was cast down to the ground. A phrase expression of the entire that word here wrong. Entire overthrow of the nation. For a vine, though plucked up, yet if immediately planted again, might grow, but being plucked up and left on the ground, and there lie, there is no hope for it. So that this denotes the desperate case of this people at this time, being in captivity. So the Targum paraphrases both clauses. And it was rooted up with strength out of the land of the house of the Shechaniah, and translated into another land. I mean, as he was trying to say in the commentary, it seems like Benjamin and Judah should have learned their lesson when the northern 10 tribes were taken into captivity with what they're doing, but all they did was turn around and follow them. It goes on in the commentary, and the east wind dried up her fruit. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the Chaldean army, compared to an east wind, because hurtful and pernicious as that is to the trees of fruit, and because Babylon lay northeast of Judea. The people of the land are meant by the fruit of the vine and their wealth and riches, which were seized upon and wasted, or carried into Babylon. So the Targum says, and a king strong as the east wind slew her people. Her strong rods were broken and withered, or strong rod, the singular for the plural, which made design King Jeconiah, particularly who with his mother, wives, princes, and officers, and the mighty of the land, even all the mighty men of value, with the craftsmen and smiths, were taken and carried captive. If you turn to 2 Kings 24:14, it says, he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and the smiths who remained, except the poorest people in the land. He carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, the king's wives, his officers, the chief men of the land. He carried them into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the men of might, even 7,000, and the craftsmen and the smiths 1,000. All of them strong and fit for war. Even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. The king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Jehoiakim's father's brother, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of Yahweh, this happened in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Commentary, the fire consumed them, the wrath of Elohim, which was often compared to fire, the same with fury in the beginning of the verse, which shows that it was for sin, which had provoked Yahweh to wrath and anger. That all of this ruin came upon the Judean nation. The Targum quote, her strong governors removed and her carrier captive, and were carried captive, and the people which are strong as fire consumed them. You know, Yahweh can take care of it. I mean, we all don't have to do anything ourselves. We just can let Yahweh do what Yahweh does. Because sooner or later, it will reach a point that Yahweh cannot ignore it any longer. Verse 13 of chapter 19 of Ezekiel, now it is planted in the wilderness, a dry and thirsty land. Commentary, now she is planted in the wilderness, in the land of Babylon, which though a very fruitful country, yet because of the hardships and miseries which the Judeans were exposed to unto it, was a wilderness to them, and a dry and thirsty ground, which is a periphrasis or description of the wilderness. Psalm 63:1. A psalm of David, when he was in the desert of Judea. Elohim, you are my Elohim. I will earnestly seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Commentary, it designs the same place as before, where the Judeans were deprived of their liberties and had not the opportunity of divine worship, the word and ordinances, and were destitute of the comforts of both of civil and religious life. Unless this is to be understood of the land of Judea, which by the devastation made in it by the king of Babylon, and the multitudes were carried captive by him out of it. It became like a desert, a dry and thirsty land. And so the vine planted in it signifies the remainder of the people left in it alter this destruction when it looked like a vine plucked up and thrown down and left on the ground, dried up with the east wind and burnt with fire. Thus it fared with the remnant in a little time after, as the next verse showed. One of the other aspects that talks about in some of the other scriptures that I didn't put in here was the fact that after all of these people were taken into captivity, the land was allowed to go back to wilderness. Now you have to understand, in Hebrew, wilderness does not mean desert. Wilderness means out this window here. That's a wilderness. Where there's trees, it's not occupied, there's not houses in it, there's people not living in the area. And so Israel became a land of a wilderness where then roamed wild animals and things like that, and then people that were, thieves, robbers. And so people got to the point where that they would actually bypass Israel. They would make their trip closer into Jordan and along the Jordan River that way. Instead of going through the country, they would go around the country. If they were going to Egypt. And it was bad. It was just overgrown, a wilderness. Ezekiel 19:14. Well, it looks like I'm going to be like Johannes. I'm going to finish up for you. Ezekiel 19:14, the fire has gone out of its branches. It has devoured its fruit, so that there is in it no strong branch to be a sepulchre to rule. This is a lamentation, and shall be for a lamentation. Commentary. And the fire has gone out of the rod of her branches. By her branches are meant the rest of the Judeans left in the land. But there was a remnant that was left in the land along with Jeremiah. And the rod of them, King Zedekiah, now on the throne, when his prophecy was given out, the fire said to go out of him signifies his rebellion against the king of Babylon, his breaking covenant and oath with him, which greatly provoked Yahweh, and brought down on his, fire of his wrath upon him. 2 Kings, as outlined in 2 Kings 24:20. For through the anger of Yahweh, this happened in Jerusalem and Judah until he had cast them out from his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon, well, which was then, I was trying to think of the name of his replacement, the one that Nebuchadnezzar put into place, that they then assassinated.
Zedekiah?
No one Zedekiah, huh? It, I get wrapped up in these things sometimes. There are things that just go out there away from you. Huh?
Jehoiakim?
Jehoiakim?
Zephaniah?
Jehoiakim? Or
No.
Jehoiakim?
No.
Jehovah
The ones
has.
that-
Sons of Josiah, I know.
What was it? Okay, anyway. Going back to the commentary here on this, which had devoured her fruit, destroyed the people by sword, famine, and pestilence, and captivity. Yes, the city and the temple of Jerusalem, with the palaces and houses thereof, were burnt with material fire. Their king was taken, his eyes put out, his sons were slain, and all the princes of Judea, so that she has no strong rod to be a scepter to rule, none to be king, or succeed in the kingdom. And there never was a king after the family of David, or the tribe of Judah, till Shalom the Messiah came. Though there were princes and governors, yet no scepter bearer, no king. The Targum of the whole is, and there came people who were strong as fire, and because of the sins of her pride, slew her people, and there were not in their strong rulers kings that were mighty to subdue kingdoms. This is a lamentation, and shall be for a lamentation. That is, this prophecy, this as a Targum, is a lamentation or matter of lamentation. What of it had been already fulfilled occasion lamentation. And when the rest should be fulfilled, it would be the cause of more. Lamentable was the case of the Judeans already, but it would still be more so when all that was foretold of them should be accomplished. It denotes the continuance of the sad state of the people, and perhaps may refer to their present condition, which will continue till they are turned to Yahweh. Normally I'd make an announcement at this point of when I'd be back to speak again, because this is not going anywhere.
Tomorrow.
2 days.
But no, it was,
Monday,
I still can't think of the name of.
Well, there was no king after him. Gedaliah was governor after him. He was the last king.
Yeah, that's the one.
Zedekiah was the
Zedekiah,
last king.
the one that they assassinated, and grabbed Jeremiah and headed off to Egypt after Yahweh told them, don't do anything. Live under this governor,
Right.
because everything will be fine. And guess what? Nobody wants to be in a fine condition. And so they decided to go off to kill him. Well, once they killed him, they had to flee then. But that didn't stop anything, because Nebuchadnezzar's troops followed him all the way into Egypt and then destroyed Egypt because they wouldn't give him up. And so, there's just so many machinations. It's like this. It's like the world today. There is so many machinations of what's going on in this world. The rumors of war, the wars that are taking place, all of the things that are taking place around us that we see. And really it concerns me for whether or not we're going to be able to continue doing these peace sites. Because it's going to depend on a lot of what happens in the next 3 months. And so whether or not we will be able to come back up here either because of cost to be here, or to come back up here because we won't be able to travel because of other things that are taking place, and the fact the price of gas is going up again, and it's supposed to be really expensive by the first of the year. All of the things that's happening within our governments that are not following Yahweh, and that's the point. They're not following Yahweh. The other things that we have to consider, are we following Yahweh? Are we being any different than these people were? Are we any different than the ones that were left behind? You know, even with Jeremiah there, he was a prophet of Yahweh, telling them everything's fine. Yahweh says he'll take care of you. Were they willing to listen? Or were they willing to rely on Yahweh to take care of things for them? Just like he says he would do. But we have to do our part too. We have to follow his laws, statutes, and ordinances. And follow them to the letter. Not just, oh, I feel like doing this today, but I don't feel like doing that. Or I feel like doing that tomorrow, and I don't feel like doing anything else. No, it's a everyday job of following Yahweh and showing Yahweh that you're following him. So with that, hallelujah, praise Yahweh. Hallelujah, Yeshua. Praise Yeshua, Yah's salvation.
Hallelujah.